Hi, welcome to my page. I go by the name Danita Sharon Quarshie, and I'm here to call out the myth about phone addiction being a disease. One may ask, what is phone addiction? Well, phone addiction refers to the excessive use of smartphones or other mobile devices, usually resulting in adverse consequences. Phone addiction in this era continues to prevail due to some reasons, which include instant access to communication, entertainment, and information, social media platforms that uses algorithms to feed content to people, and the desire among the youth to be constantly connected with the happenings on social media because no one wants to feel left out or uninformed, among other reasons. My objective in this video is to debunk the notion that phone addiction is a disease, especially among the youth. According to a study by Common Sense Media, teenagers between the ages of 13 to 18 years have the highest rate of smartphone addiction. Also, according to Pew Research Center in 2015, 8% of people say they are addicted to their phone because it helps them escape reality. One may ask, why this topic? Well, when I was younger, I never particularly enjoyed outdoor Ghanaian games like Pele, Ampe, and Pilolo. Instead, I derived more joy and comfort from playing online games or watching shows on my mobile devices. Currently, most people in my family identify me as addicted to my mobile phone because they usually find me on it and therefore consider it as a disease to be addicted to my phone. However, I beg to differ and think it's a wildly inaccurate assumption for phone addiction to be classified as a disease instead of an escape from some of the realities and anxieties of life. The real question is phone addiction actually a disease? Some people, like my relatives, definitely think it is, while others think otherwise. These are some of the reasons why I think phone addiction should not be classified as a disease. Firstly, biological, neurological, and physiological traits. Medically defined, a disease is a condition of an organism that interferes with its normal physiological and biological functioning. Phone addiction does not fit the criteria to be identified as a disease because diseases usually have vivid biological causes which can often be identified or measured, like viruses, bacteria, or genetic disorders. Phone addiction usually has more to do with individual behaviors and choices influenced by psychological and social factors. Therefore, it does not have a specific pathology that can be treated with medical interventions. Instead, it is about modifying habits in relationship with technology or perhaps mobile devices. Again, habits formation and social needs. Phone addiction is more accurately described as a habit rather than a disease. And because habits involve repeated behaviors that can potentially be controlled or modified, phone addiction cannot be identified as a disease because it is not treated with medicine, but rather something that can be managed with mindfulness and behavioral changes. It's usually also developed due to social and environmental influences like peer pressure, convenience of smartphones, internet, among others. These factors contribute to the development of increased phone usage, but cannot necessarily be categorized as phone addiction. Finally, phone addiction is not a disease as it is not diagnosable by doctors and health workers. Unlike diseases that require medical attention to treat, phone addiction can be managed by a combination of strategies to improve behavior and establishing healthier habits like setting boundaries, finding alternate activities, counseling or seeking support, taking digital breaks, and connecting with the natural world as much as possible. Others might argue that medical conditions may arise from the fixation of phones and technological devices. Some common ones are strain on the neck, wrist, and back, which could lead to serious body aches, and problems with the eyes, as the light from phones can greatly hurt the eyes. Also, the internet can also be used to promote exposure to sensitive information and hence bully people, which in turn can create depression, anxiety, low self-esteem, and other psychological and mental conditions. I would therefore use this platform to encourage everyone, especially the youth, to desist from such behaviors, as they actually do have physical and mental impacts on some people. However, I have to say that indeed an addiction of any sort is not the best, and I believe everything should be done in moderation. A simple analogy of such would be riding a bicycle. Riding a bicycle is not a bad thing. However, one may ride and have a life-threatening accident which may lead to serious injuries, amputation, or even death in worst-case scenarios. And this does not mean cycling is a life-threatening activity, just that some undesired situations may arrive, and just like every other thing under the sun, phones are not an exemption. A typical example is when the internet went off nationwide. So many people felt something similar to withdrawal symptoms, like a huge part of our day and lives for that matter is missing, as we could not spend as much time we wanted to on our phones due to bad network. During this time, I talked to my mother and she asked, if the internet never comes back on, what will you do? And without hesitation, I loosely said, Mommy, I would just die. And I laughed. Later, I reflected upon these words and felt sad with what my life had come to. We are always neck deep in our phones and technological devices to the point that we ignore what is truly important and the people closest to us, just to indulge and immerse ourselves in the global village we call it. I would like to express my disagreement to the idea of phone addiction being classified as a disease. As a person who has spent a considerable amount of time using electronic devices, I understand the negative effects of being overly attached to your phone. However, I believe that this behavior does not meet the criteria to be labeled as a disease. Instead, it should be viewed as a behavioral issue resulting from repeated actions. I believe the term phone addiction is sometimes taken out of context. The fact that an individual is paying rapt attention to his or her phone does not necessarily mean he or she is addicted to the phone. To those who claim that phone addiction is a disease, did they ever consider to look at the positive aspects? After all, there are two sides to every story. As I stated earlier, there are a myriad of things the phone and other technological devices can help an individual do, some of which require the utmost concentration in order to properly execute, and sometimes that is all there is to it. Phone addiction should be considered as a behavioral issue rather than a medical disease because it mainly involves learned habits and repeated choices that people make to engage with their phones. And unlike diseases that have biological and physiological traits, phone addiction has not been proven to have a distinct medical cause.